Okay, as we approach the truck, are we recording? Okay, make sure there's no fluid leaks under the truck. We're going to check our headlights, our blinkers, and our cracked cab lights to make sure they're not cracked or broken and they're the proper color. On the passenger side of the motor, we're going to check our alternator. Make sure it's nice and tight. We have no broken or frayed wires, no more than 3/4 inch play on the belt. And then we're going to check our water pump. We make sure it's secure and it's not leaking and it's gear driven. And no more than 3/4 inch play on that. Then we're going to check our shock, make sure it's mounted, secure, and not leaking. Our U-bolts and our leaf springs are tight. We have no crack, broken, or missing U-bolts, no crack, broken, missing, or shifted springs. Then our spring hangers, make sure they're mounted securely to the frame and all the bolts are in place and tight. And our bushing is not worn out or missing. Then we're going to check our airline, make sure it's secure and not leaking. Our brake chamber is secure and not leaking. And our push rod is not cracked or bent. And our slack adjuster has no more than 1 inch play with the brakes released. And we're going to check our brake drums and shoes to make sure we have no excessive wear, no heat cracks, and that they're dry. Then our tire, evenly worn, minimum 430 seconds tread depth, no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts on the sidewalls. And we're going to check our pressure with a gauge. Then we're going to check our rim, make sure we have no illegal welds and it's not cracked or bent. We're going to check our lug nuts to make sure there's none missing, they appear to be tight, and there's no rust trails or shiny threads that indicate they were loose. And then we're going to check our hub to make sure it's secure, it's above add, and it's not leaking. On this side of the motor, we're going to check our coolant reservoir, make sure it's mounted and secure, it's above add, and the cap and the hoses aren't leaking. We're going to check our oil to make sure our oil is above add. And we're going to check our power steering reservoir, make sure it's secure, it's above add, and the cap and hoses aren't leaking. Follow that down to our power steering pump. Make sure it's mounted and secure, not leaking, and it's gear driven. And our compressor, make sure it's mounted and secure, the hoses aren't leaking, and that's also gear driven. Then our steering box, we make sure it's mounted securely to the frame and the bolts are in place and tight. Our pitman arm and steering assembly, it's not cracked or bent, and all of our castle nuts and pins are in place. We're going to check our suspension, our brakes, our tire, rim, lugs, and hub, same as we checked the other side. That's A. Alright, now we're going to do B form. We're going to do the door. We're going to check our hinges to make sure they're secure, they're not cracked or bent. We want to make sure the door opens and closes properly, and the seal is not ripped or torn. And we're going to check our mirror bracket, make sure it's mounted securely to the frame and all the hardware is tight, bolts are tight, whatever. Alright. Then we're going to check our tank. We want to make sure our tank is mounted and secure with the straps, no metal to metal. Our cap is tight, not leaking, and our steps are secure with no obstructions. Then we're going to check our frame, make sure we have no illegal welds, it's not cracked or bent. Our cross members, make sure they're secure, all the bolts are in place and tight. We're going to check our exhaust, make sure it's mounted and secure, the clamps are in place, and we have no leaks under the cab. Then we're going to check our drive shaft, make sure our drive shaft is not cracked or bent, and it's mounted and secure. Alright, now we're going to do this back axle. We're going to start on the inside with all of our air lines going to our brake chambers. We want to make sure the air lines to our brake chambers are secure and not leaking. Our brake chambers are secure and not leaking. Our push rod is not cracked or bent, and our slack adjuster has no more than 1 inch play. On this side of the frame, we're going to start with our U-bolts and our leaf springs. Make sure they're secure. We have no crack, broken, or missing U-bolts, no crack, broken, missing, or shifted springs. Then we're going to come up to the spring hanger, make sure it's mounted securely to the frame and all the bolts are in place and tight. And then our torsion bar, it's mounted secure, not cracked or bent, and our bushing is not worn out or missing. Then our brake drums and shoes, no excessive wear, no heat cracks, and that they're dry. We're going to check our tires to make sure we have even wear, minimum 230 seconds tread depth, no abrasion, bubbles, or cuts on the sidewalls, and our pressure with a gauge. We're going to check our pressure. In between the two tires, we'll make sure they're evenly spaced and we have no obstructions in there. And then our rim, no illegal welds, it's not cracked or bent. Lug nuts, none missing, they appear to be tight. We have no rust trails, shiny threads that indicate they were loose. And then our hub is mounted and secure and it's not leaking. We're going to check our mud flat, make sure it's secure and it's the proper length. Alright, now we're going to check our coupling devices. We're going to check our electric line, service, and our emergency line. We want to make sure they're mounted securely to the trailer and the truck. We're going to make sure our electric line is not cracked or frayed, our air lines are not cracked or leaking, and our glad hand seals aren't ripped or torn. We're going to check our pinhole hook to make sure we have our locking pin in there and it's all secure and there's no cracks or no breaks. Our chains are mounted securely to the trailer and our clamps or hooks are secure and functioning properly. And then we're going to check our landing gear. We want to make sure it's secure The feet are all the way up, and our handle's in its cradle. And we're going to check the side of our frame. Make sure there's no illegal welds, it's not cracked or bent. Our cross members are all mounted and secure and tight. And we're going to do this axle starting with our air line and our brake chambers. Air lines to our brake chambers are not cracked or leaking. Our brake chambers are secure and not leaking. Push rod is not cracked, bent, or broken. And our slack adjuster has no more than 1 inch play. We'll come over to our U-bolts and our leaf springs. Make sure they're mounted and secure. We have no crack, broken, or missing U-bolts. No crack, broken, missing, or shifted springs. And then our spring hangers are mounted and secure and they're not cracked or bent. And our torsion bars are secure, not cracked or bent. And our bushings are not worn out or missing. Brake drums and shoes, no excessive wear, no heat cracks, and that they're dry. Our tires, evenly worn, minimum 2/32 tread depth, no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. And we're going to check our pressures with a gauge. Between the two tires, make sure they're evenly spaced and we have no obstructions. Our rim, no illegal welds, it's not cracked or bent. Our lug nuts, none missing, they appear to be tight. No rust trails, shiny threads indicate they were loose. And our hubs back here are mounted secure above ad, not leaking. And we're going to check that axle same as that one. And then we're going to check our mud flat, make sure it's mounted and secure and it's the proper length. And when we get back here, we're going to check all of our lights. Make sure they're not cracked, broken, or missing, and they're the proper color. And we want to make sure we have our reflective tape and our ramps are secure and function properly. One thing I did forget. The lights on the back of the tractor. Or the dump truck. Don't forget those lights. Okay, so mud flap, lights, and then your coupling devices. Okay?